Hare Krishna, welcome back. I wasn't here 2 weeks ago, but if you remember what we were talking about, does anybody remember what we were talking about 2 weeks ago, or is that verse in the Bhagavatam where people in Kali Yuga are unfortunate because they have, one of the reasons is they have bad memories? Can anyone remember? Of course, we have to get people who are here. I don't think Sunil was here, but Manjesh was here, and of course, Bhakti and Carol was here. Who remembers what we were talking about 2 weeks ago? Who has any idea? We'll give you 30 seconds. There's something about women, right? It's something about men, and something about what men, kind of the role of men and the role of women, and what women expect from men. Does anyone have an idea? Okay. Well, Sunil, you would know. And yes, Sunil, see, the thing is, if he's from Holland and you're in Holland, then it's kind of late for you. It's like 1 a.m, right? Okay, and Vinod, Winod, wouldn't know. We were talking about, okay, it's your big chance, Manjesh. Do you remember? Sugandhi, I don't think you were here. Bhakti and Carol, you remember? So, we're talking about the whole concept that comes up in the Bhagavatam and many of Prabhupada's writings about this idea of women being protected, which makes it sound like women are somewhat inferior to men and they can't really take care of themselves. And so we were discussing what that means, and we were not discussing it in the way of women being inferior, but in terms of natural psychology, and how a male has a natural psychology to want to protect a woman, and the woman has a natural psychology to want to be protected. Unless the woman has been mistreated by men, or has not found a man that's capable of protecting her, then she's forced to protect herself, or may prefer to protect herself than rather be so-called protected by a man who cannot protect her. So we were talking about such things as, well, what do men protect women from? And I was joking and said they protect women from car mechanics who try to cheat them. But if you actually think about it, there are many things that a man naturally takes care of. So that's a form of protection. He's taking care of things which may be not natural or not desirable for a woman to take care of. So that's a sense of protection. But we also discussed how within marriage there's a sense of the female, the woman, the wife protecting the husband also. So it works both ways because it's an ashram. So what is the man protected, or how does the wife protect the man? Well, in Bhagavatam it says the wife is man's intelligence. Sometimes we see men do stupid things, or they're about to do stupid things. Excuse me. It's allergy season here. And the wife tells the man, or the husband, don't do that. You're going to ruin yourself. It's going to be a problem. Or don't trust this person. They're going to take advantage of you. So, and also, the woman protects the man through his chastity to her. So it really works both ways. But I have an article today, which was written by Urmila, about this very topic. And if you want to hear what I said, if you go to Krishna.com /Mahatma, no, Krishna.com, is that right? /Mahatma, and then you can scroll down, there's audio. And that would be the show from 2 weeks ago. And if you find that audio, then you can hear more of what I said. And now we're going to read what Mother Urmila says. All these classes are Krishna.com /Mahatma, are there in audio, and some of them are there in video. And so we're looking right now on the internet here to see the file. What's there a date on that? We don't know. Is that the only one that's up there? We only see one, but there's been about 10. So it's not in any kind of order, huh? We'll take care of it. There used to be separated by courses, and you could see them all one by one. Anyway, I'm going to read something. This is entitled "Women Protected or independent. So juxtaposing, you may not think independent is the antonym to protected, but in the context that Srila Prabhupada explains the word protected, in the context the Bhagavatam explains it, independent would be the opposite of protected. In other words, a woman not wanting to come so-called under the control of another man. Protected doesn't necessarily mean under the control in a slavish way or a negative way. But it means, at least within the way Prabhupada explains it, in a good way. Protected in a proper way. Dependent in a good way. In a way that's natural and desirable. Now, just before I begin reading this, I wanted to say that, and we discussed this before, one of the problems that some people have in discussing these topics is that society today is much different than society was in Vedic times. And we may sometimes look at the Vedic paradigm in a way that it doesn't make sense to us today. And so often we have to look at principles rather than what's practical, or rather than copy identically how things were set up within that social structure. But at the same time, I think it's important to recognize that the society in which we live in is filled with problems, especially in terms of marriage, and especially in terms of the exploitation of women. And so when we think of it in those terms, and then we look at the Vedic ideal, which even may be impractical, we can see so much value in it. And in the Krishna consciousness movement, what we are trying to do gradually is create a different culture within our own lives, and then gradually within society at large. Because when Srila Prabhupada established his movement, he didn't really have a culture. It was basically foremost, it was a missionary movement. And then later on, he said we need to establish culture. And then what he meant by that was varnashram culture, agrarian-based culture. And then the more you're able to do that, the more these principles, societal principles, cultural principles, become practical in that environment. So, did that make sense? I hope that made sense. But at least it's my realization that when we look at the problems that face our culture today, it sort of enables us to better see what Veda culture is offering us that we can use, even if externally it seems outdated, outmoded, even impractical, or it doesn't make sense to us at face value. But if we understand it more deeply, we can begin to see how the principles can be applied or adjusted, but still followed, and they'll be superior to what our society is creating and offering us today in the name of liberalism or advancement or progress. There's so many concomitant problems. And I'm not saying across the board everything that we're doing in our culture today is bad. But I'm saying much of what we may subconsciously buy into, thinking that it's going to work or it's good or it's better, often is creating bigger problems than it's attempting to solve. Okay, so let's begin. Are you ready? Women protected or independent? A welcome offered by unmarried girls. A welcome offered by unmarried girls who are internally and externally clean and are dressed in nice garments and ornaments is also auspicious. So this is from a purport, and it's from the middle of the purport. It's talking about, it's considered at any event, wherever there are unmarried virgin girls, it creates an auspicious atmosphere. And here it says, if they're internally clean, pure, externally clean, and dressed nicely. Kumari or unmarried girls, untouched by the hand of any member of the opposite sex, are auspicious members of society. Even today, in Hindu society, the most conservative families do not allow unmarried girls to go out freely or mix with boys. So here's an example that you might look at this and think, this is pretty fanatical or impractical. So when Prabhupada says even today, this was written probably like 1974. I don't know how much this is being followed. One devotee who was in 1974, probably a teenager, told me that her father would not let her wear short-sleeve shirts, short-sleeve cholis, and she always had to wear long sleeves. So this was you may look at this and think, wow, her father's pretty weird, or he's pretty fanatical, but look at it another way, that this is how cultures, or sophisticated cultures, have traditionally lived. They have separated men and women, and the women covered their bodies. Just look at pictures of America in the 19th century. That's how women dressed. It's not that this is something so outlandish. That was normal up till probably 60 years ago, 70, 80 years ago. This was pretty normal. They are very carefully protected by their parents while unmarried. After marriage, they are protected by their young husbands, and when elderly, they are protected by their children. When thus protected, women as a class remain an always auspicious source of energy to men. So, the point Prabhupada's making here is that unmarried women who are protected are auspicious, and married women who are protected are auspicious, and that it creates a peaceful situation for the girl and for society, and actually they're happier that way. Now you may think, well, in our society, a woman being protected by her father who's arranging a marriage, she may not be happy with that, and that's true. But in the long run, I would say that the more advice she gets or help she gets in choosing a mate, the happier she will be in the long run. And we can likely statistically prove this, since the divorce rate is so high, and since most marriages are not done in consultation of astrologers, of Brahmins, of relatives, at least not in the West, generally. So here, Prabhupada's talking about protection of the unmarried girl. So a big part of that protection is helping her get settled in marriage with the proper man, so she won't end up with some man who cannot take care of her, or a man who cannot financially support her, or a man who is abusive or irresponsible or not a proper father, all which are common today. So now you look at what her options are, and you think, okay, the girl's being protected by the father, and the mother, and they're going to help her make the proper decision on who to marry. This starts to look a lot better than the chances of having a successful marriage and ending up with kids and a husband you divorce, or who divorces you, or just leaves you. These things are common. So you see what I'm saying? That if you look at it in terms of what are the options, then the traditional system starts to look better. Now, some of you have heard of Dr. Laura. And Dr. Laura, she has a radio show, I don't know if she still has one, and people call in with their problems. And generally, the people who are calling in are mostly women, and guess who they have problems with? Could anybody take a wild guess who these young women who are calling in have problems with? Is it their father? Is it their brother? Is it their uncle? Is it their Aunt Judy in Timbuktu? Is it Grandpa Harry? Who is it? Who are they having problems with? Bhakti and Carol, who are they having problems with when they're calling in Dr. Laura? Husbands or boyfriends. Dr. Laura, I have this boyfriend, and I'm pregnant now, and he doesn't want to marry me, and he said he loved me, but he's not really ready for the responsibility of having a kid, and it's just like typical. And Dr. Laura says, why'd you have sex with him if he wasn't going to marry you? Well, he said he loved me, and I thought he would. And so she would say, oh, so you're a prostitute then. And then the girl would be taken back. And then Dr. Laura would say, well, at least you should charge him money because you're having sex with him, and he's not going to take responsibility. And so she's making this point that this is such a common thing, that women have relationships with men who are not willing to take responsibility for them. In other words, these men are not protecting these women, but they're willing to have sex and get them at the risk of getting them pregnant. So now what's the alternative here? The alternative is have a father who protects the girl, who finds a husband who will be responsible, who trains the girl to maintain her virginity because it's the best thing to do, and save it for her husband, etc., etc. So, okay, now the women want to be independent. Now, Dr. Laura wrote a book about this, which is very interesting. And I think the book is called something like 10 stupid things women do to mess up their lives. And it's all in relationship to becoming infatuated by men and falling in love with the wrong man, and then it turning into a total mess in their lives, where the guy leaves them, they're depressed, the guy has 3 other girlfriends along with them, the guy gets them pregnant and leaves, etc., etc. All because the women didn't have the proper discretion to understand the difference between a man who actually really loves her and is going to take care of her, and a man who isn't. Which is interesting because this is exactly what Prabhupada said. Whenever he used the word less intelligent with women, he didn't generally apply that to their practical abilities in the material world. You know, women are great writers, great speakers, great teachers. They can be politicians. They can be, although sometimes he really didn't think women should be politicians, but women are successful business people. They can do so many things. But in this regard, he would say, this is where women's intelligence lacks in understanding and having the discretion to understand when a man, or who that right man is, when the man says, I love you, when actually he loves your body and he wants to take advantage of it. And that whole book, 10 Stupid Things Women Do to Ruin Their Lives, is all about Dr. Laura trying to help women have that discretion, because they don't see it. And why did she write that book? Because so many girls were calling her on her radio show, telling her how their lives are being messed up. Well, I have this boyfriend, and now he's in jail, and he did this, and I don't know if I should stay with him. And you have a criminal for a boyfriend. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's a pretty smart thing to do, right? And it's the 3rd time he's been in jail, and he's an alcoholic, and he was formerly a drug addict, but I really love him, and we have a kid, but we're not married, and I really don't know what to do. How did that girl get in a mess like that? Because she didn't have a father there, and she wasn't submitting, or she had a father that she wasn't submitting to, and she didn't have that facility to help her. So as a result of years and years of having women call up with this being very typical, well, I have this boyfriend, but he left me, and then he wants to come back, but he got another girl pregnant, but I really love him, and I missed him, and have these women finding all these guys who are ruining their lives, but somehow they got emotionally, physically attached, still caught in love with him, and they can't break the attachment, and it's just messing them up. So, protection of the father, very important. Guiding the girl as she's growing up, helping her understand the potential pitfalls, and helping her in her choice of the proper husband, so she won't just become attached to some guy and so-called fall in love when this guy is not the right one. Okay. So Bhakti and Carol says, I have photos of a female relative around 1900. She believed it was sinful for a woman to let her ankles show. Yeah, if you look at pictures of women in those days, they wore hats, right? And then basically the dresses they wore were up to here on their neck, right? Practically their collar was right up to their chin, and they wore long dresses and they wore boots. And they had, I think, frayed sleeves by their hands. Practically there was nothing you could see. It was almost like the way women in the strict Muslim countries dress. It's very, very similar. It's very interesting that that was considered normal. And they go to the beach and they dress that way. We've come a long way, baby, haven't we? Okay. So, yeah, Bhakti and Carol, you could read that book. Or maybe you could write the book now, after having experienced it. Yeah, it's very common. Women often have a difficult time discerning who is the right man and becoming easily attached to a man who really is not capable. There are many men out there who are nice guys who are totally incapable of being husbands. Many. And they're probably increasing every day in the numbers. They come from broken families. They didn't have father figures. They were not taught. They didn't how to be a good father, how to be a good husband. They didn't have any examples, or they had bad examples. So there's plenty of nice guys out there who are going to fail in that department, and many innocent women become attached to these nice guys, and these nice guys inadvertently and unintentionally can ruin their lives. There's probably more than 10 stupid things women do to mess up their lives. At the same time, men become attached to women who are the wrong women, who are not going to be good wives. In Vedic times, they did astrology so that they would match up qualified men and women. They wouldn't marry a Brahmin woman with a Kshatriya man. They might marry a Kshatriya woman with a Brahmin man, but they wouldn't marry, or a Brahmin woman with a Shudra woman. They're so different. They just wouldn't have anything in common. So this is a big problem. So you can see in Vedic times, they were very, very careful. They would do the astrology. They would generally marry within a particular class or caste because they were so much alike, so similar, and that made it easier. So they didn't take marriage lightly. And the love marriage where people just fall in love and get married, it did happen, but it was not the prominent kind and not the kind that generally parents wanted. Okay. So, Mayapur says, sometimes you hear people say, why do I have to dress appropriate? Why can't men control themselves? Very good question. I love that one. And I think it's important for women to understand the second half of the last 5 words of the last 4 words. Can't men control themselves? Well, that's a question. No, they can't. Don't expect it. I totally understand where you're coming from. We talk about women dressing properly and segregation of the sexes, and the women think, what's wrong with these guys? These guys are supposed to be spiritual. And if they're spiritual, why are they getting so agitated by the form of a woman? Naturally, a woman would think that way. Or sometimes we hear it said, the women say, well, some of these guys, they come to the temple and they're walking around in their shorts, or they don't have a shirt, or they just have like an undershirt. So, why can they do it and we can't? Well, that's also a valid point. But still, I would say that the female form physically is way more attractive to a man than the male form is physically attractive to women in general. Not that I'm not saying that the male form is not attractive to women, but as a principle, the female form is much more attractive physically. And men are attracted to women mostly through their eyes. That's where it all happens. A man can be extremely attracted to a woman through his eyes, even if he doesn't even like her or wouldn't even want to have anything to do with her in any kind of long-term relationship. He may look at her and go, she's not my type, or this or that. But still, physically, he could be extremely attracted. Generally, with women, that's less likely to happen. The relationship aspect is extremely important. For a man, relationship is not always important. The physical is what gets him, and it gets him off guard, and sometimes he just loses his mind. So, let me give you an example. Such a good question. I love this question. Could you imagine if you were fasting, let's say like on Lord Nrsingadev's Appearance Day will fast till dusk, which is about now, right? Or it just was about, 7:30 or so. So you're fasting on Lord Nrsingadev's Appearance Day, and you're really hungry. And finally you get to serve out the feast, and every preparation to the feast is your favorite. It's the one you like the most. And not only that, you've been eating ginger all day. So you are so hungry. And here are all your favorite preparations. So you imagine, just the pushing and pulling of your senses in that situation. This is particularly for ladies to try to understand. You're already hungry naturally because you haven't eaten, but you've been eating ginger all day, so your appetite is. You ever been so hungry that you sometimes, like, if you didn't eat at that point, you feel like you'd kill somebody, or like you could pick up a refrigerator and you could just, like, you have to eat. It's like, you ever felt that way, Uddhava? Uddhava says no, he's never felt that way. Or you're like, you miss lunch and now it's like 5:30 and you just come home and it's like, I'm so hungry. Is there anything to eat? You never felt that way, Uddhava? Yes, he did. Yeah. Is there anything? You just have to eat something. Could you take out the trash can? I just got to eat first. I just got to eat. So imagine that feeling, and what is placed in front of you is your favorite foods. Okay. So why am I giving this example? That's what it's like for a man when he sees a beautiful woman. And your ladies are going, no way, no way, it's not like that. And the guys are going, yes way, yes way. Okay, it's not like that all the time, and it's not like that for every guy, but particularly for young boys, when they're around beautiful girls, and particularly for lusty men, and particularly for men who see a woman who is extremely attracted to them, it's like it just stimulates their appetite, and inside the man is thinking, I want that woman. I just want to be with her. I want to touch her. So that is why traditionally women did not dress in a way that would anyway disturb men. Now you might be thinking, well, I'm not that attractive. So why would any guy be attracted to me? And I'll tell you a story which I told before, which is a really good story. I'm going to tell it again because all of you may not have been here and you may not have remembered this story. So one time I was taking a walk with my dear godbrother Giri Ashrami, and we were this time in Mauritius, and we were taking a long japa walk, and somewhere along the way, after about a half hour we were walking, we walked by a bus stop in a neighborhood, and one lady was sitting by the bus stop, and this lady was very short, probably under 5 feet, or not much, somewhere between like 4'11" and 5'1". So, but she was very round, very big, like maybe as big as a woman who would be like 6 feet, like that wide. That you would expect a woman that wide to be about 6 feet, but she was only like 5 or 4'11". So it kind of gave, the impression a little bit like a ball, kind of like her body was shaped a little bit like a ball. In other words, what I'm trying to say, physically, she was not very attractive just because she was overweight. Not overweight, she was just by nature, she was a heavy-set woman. That was just her constitution. Which would have, it wouldn't have been so bad if she were 6 feet tall or 5'10" or something. But because she was so short, it made her physically very unattractive. So when I saw her, the first thought that came to my mind is that for men, oftentimes it's very disturbing to be around women who are very physically attractive because it distracts the mind. And the nature of the mind is it gets easily distracted. As you all know, when you're chanting japa, the mind gets distracted by any kind of little thing. So when I was seeing the woman, I was thinking in my mind, well, one of the big obstacles in spiritual life is sexual attraction. So if all women were like this woman, not attractive, then spiritual life would be easier. It wouldn't be so much of a challenge for men, it wouldn't be so much of a distraction or a disturbance. And then I said that to Giriraj Swami. I said, just if all women were like this, or if I could see all women in a similar way that I see her in terms of my physical attraction, because I didn't have any physical attraction to this woman, then how much easier that would be. And Giriraj Swami said that Prabhupada said, when a man is agitated, sexually agitated, any body will do. So that is the male psyche. The male psyche is very much body oriented towards the woman, looking, checking the body out. This is what, and then when a man is agitated, any body looks good. He doesn't care about a relationship. He just cares about the body. So if women understand that, then the next logical thing they can understand is that potentially your body can be a source of agitation to men. Now, if you're not a devotee, that might be something you want to do. It's like go around and attract men. And that gives you a sense of what? Self-esteem, self-confidence, or success, power. Hey, look, I'm a hot babe. All these guys are like looking at me, and you feel really good. Yeah, I'm beautiful, I'm attractive. So that we talked about that in earlier classes. So that's an aspect of the female nature, which is not what we wish to cultivate in Krishna consciousness. That's an aspect which we want to subdue if it's there. So a Krishna conscious woman does not want to in any way draw attention to her physical form, because she knows potentially that can be disturbing to a man's mind. And why would she want to disturb a man's mind? She wouldn't. As devotees, we want to help one another think of Krishna. So we wouldn't want to do anything that would cause us to forget Krishna, or cause us to be distracted from Krishna. So that's why women dress in a way that is not disturbing to men, or at least they're supposed to dress in that way. And in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada said the symptom of Kali Yuga, or the symptom that will later take place in Kali Yuga, which is already taking place now, but particularly in the last maybe 30, 40 years, is that, and Prabhupada says this right in the first canto, he said, women will dress in an overly attractive manner to victimize the minds of men. So what women should understand is that men are strong up to a point, and we have this example, men is like fire, and a woman is like fire, men is like butter. So men are strong up to a point, but when women dress in a very seductive, bare way, then this verse, this statement by Prabhupada, rings true. Women will dress in an overly attractive fashion to victimize the minds of men. And so when women dress that way, men are attracted. They can't help themselves. I mean, unless they're on a spiritual platform. And even those on a spiritual platform may not always be able to keep their minds from being distracted. And you have examples that Prabhupada gives of great devotees and great spiritualists who became allured by beautiful women. And it's just a fact of life. So traditionally, in Vedic culture, women didn't dress in an overly attractive fashion. Basically, when they went out in public, they kept themselves covered, and they didn't, strut around showing off their stuff. They kind of just stayed out of the way as a service to the men. That's your service, women, to the men, is not to do anything that would disturb them. Now, it's woman's nature to want to dress up, and in Vedic culture, they were dressing up for their husbands. They weren't going out in public showing off their stuff. They would do that with their husbands. So everything was kept in the house. Now, today, it's much different. And so, when men find trouble, or you see men whose minds are disturbed, I don't think you should think, well, what's wrong with these guys? Can't they control themselves? I think you should think these guys it's just the nature how they're wired. So they're You should think of these guys like walking gas tanks, and you are like fire. And if you're showing your body, it's going to blow up their gas tank. If you're showing your stuff off, if you're strutting around showing your stuff off, their gas tank's going to blow up. That's just how it is. Now you may say, yeah, but there's so many men, and they're not raping women, and they're not doing this and that. Well, ladies, they're doing it in their mind a lot. And statistics say 60 or 70% of the men in this world, at least in America, are looking at pornography on a regular basis. So men are wired this way, and they're going out on the street and getting agitated. They're coming home, looking on their computers, and most of that pornography is being viewed at while they're at work, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? So, this culture where everything is sexually stimulating is really destroying the foundation of peaceful family life. Because now these guys are just looking, so many guys are looking for wives who are hot babes. And, the girls are trying to lure the studs, and it's just a big mess. And I'm going to tell you a joke now, because it's time to laugh, because this is so sick. If we don't laugh, we'll cry. How many of you have heard of Yogi Berra? Yogi Berra was a baseball player, but he was also a philosopher. And one lady came to Yogi and said, "Hey Yogi, you're pretty cool." To which he replied, "You're not so hot yourself." So, that was a good one for all the hot babes, right? You're not so hot yourself. Okay. So I'm going to read what you're saying here. Okay. So Bhakti Carol says, I was never told these things when I was younger. This information is some sort of format should be presented to young people. Absolutely 100% I'm thinking of it. And I'm going to speak to another devotee tomorrow about it. Because I'm already doing this with the men, but it hasn't been done with the women yet. So we did our sexual purity for men. So men can deal with their issues. And I think I'm going to record it and create a workbook and get it out there to the world. Maybe do a video. But I'm going to hopefully talk to the devotee tomorrow about doing it for women. It's very important. In fact, maybe someday I'll even do a rewrite of Dr. Laura's book, because it's not 100% KC. I mean, it's good, but we can Krishnaize so the book becomes kind of like the parent for the girl to help her with her discrimination in choosing a husband. Okay. Mayapur says, it's like going shopping when you're hungry, everything looks good. Exactly. Exactly. So then we lose our discrimination or discretion. Yeah, anybody will do. It's and men are, you might say, well, why are men wired like this? Well, because men are wired like this, in traditional cultures, they had more than one wife. Why do they have more than one wife? Because they're so sexually active. They're like, cannons that can fire at any moment. So they had many wives. So, they could have a lot of sex because that's how they're wired. But it won't work in Kali Yuga. Hardly one man can take care of one wife. And the co-wives wouldn't get along anyway. So it's not allowed. But you see in some traditional cultures and Muslim cultures that the men would have many wives. So that was the idea. And Prabhupada also said that usually there's more women than men, so all the women should be married, so men would have to marry more than one woman. But he also said because the men are so sexually oriented, they would need more than one wife to satisfy them. So knowing these things is helpful for women, especially helpful in choosing a husband. Okay. What's that thing on the bottom, Uddhava? Oh. Okay. How do men make it, though, Bhakti Carol's asking, how do men make it through, say, a Walmart checkout line? Women after women wearing short spandex shorts with sequins on the back. One of the things men do is they fantasize. And they don't actually make it, which is why there's so much pornography, because why so many men are addicted to pornography, because they're going out and they're getting sexually agitated by these women. And unless they personally have the desire to be sexually pure, they just come home and they're sexually agitated, and they'll do all kinds of sexual things, pornography, masturbation, etc., etc. Girlfriends, 2, 3, 4. It's just because the whole atmosphere is agitating them. And one of the things we talked about in our sexual purity seminar was how much, particularly when men say, "Well, I'm so sexually agitated, it's so difficult to control." If they just rewind the tape, they can see how there's so much sexual agitation around, and how cautious they have to be not to eat it up or not to meditate on it. So this is what we teach in the sexual purity seminar, that when you're around all this, you don't meditate on it. Okay, there's the woman like this and that. You look away. But if you contemplate it, then we have the story of a Jamil. So Jamil's, he's this really nice Brahmin boy. Everything is fine and cool, and he's doing his puja. And then he's going out to get some water or flowers, whatever it is, for his puja. Then he's walking on the road, and there's this couple basically having sex on the road, or just embracing, half naked, embracing and kissing. And he'd never seen anything like that. And that became the beginning of his downfall, because it implanted a seed within his heart. I want to do that. So the nature of degradation is we're so much more attracted to degraded things than elevating things. So when we see something degraded, it implants a big seed in our heart. So that was the beginning of the end for Jamil. So now we're surrounded by all this. And so Prabhupada writes in the purport there, he said, in Kali Yuga, what Jamil saw back when he lived, which was not common in Kali Yuga, is common. He said, therefore, unless a devotee is controlled, it's not exactly how he said it, but basically controlled, regulated, disciplined, pure in his habits of eating and sleeping, mating, and so forth, there's really no hope for that person. And so what do you find? Oh, did you just hear that this big person in charge of this university was having an affair with this person and that one, and this one and that, this sports celebrity and this basketball player, and every, that's just what you're finding out. So, multiply that by like 100 of what's really going on. So, what am I saying? I'm saying these guys, when they see the spandex and this and that, how do they make it through that? They're not making it through it. That's why there's all these problems. That's why there's divorce. Hey, my wife's 45 now. She doesn't look like she did when she's 25. Hey, there's a girl at work, 32. She's a lot hotter than my wife. And so the man is so sexually agitated, he can't control himself. He can't just mature gracefully and grow in his relationship with his wife, because there's so much sexual stimulus. So unless he fights it, unless he deals with this, unless he understands it, unless he's very devoted to his family, it's very easy for him to get sidetracked by that slender 32-year-old blonde with blue eyes, because he's coming back to see his wrinkly old fat wife when he gets home, who doesn't look like she did when we got married. And it's really important for him to look at some sexy babe. That's what society is conditioning us to do. And so men are being conditioned to see women as objects, not as persons to be protected, but as objects of sense gratification. And the women are not smart enough to see it. So they're allowing the men to do it. And that was Prabhupada's point. This is the conditioning of our society. Ladies, the men are not seeing you as goddesses. They're not seeing you as mothers. They're seeing you as machines for sex. That's the truth, unfortunately. That's how these guys who are giving you when you're walking down the street and these guys are checking you out and giving you the eye, you're a piece of meat for them. And they want to enjoy that meat. It's disgusting. And it's important that as women you know that. So you don't project any kind of sexual vibe, because if you do, they can smell it and they're going to go after it. You want to project very much a pure vibe. Even with devotee men, you just want to keep it pure and keep yourself covered and Be aware that these things disturb men. Prabhupada says, many a stalwart in the devotional line has fallen victim to these allurements of sex and of women and money. Many a stalwart. What to speak of the average Bhakta Joe? Many a stalwart. So, the answer to your question is, how do men make it through the Walmart checkout? They don't. Of course, a good thing about Walmart that I've noticed is most of the people who shop there are overweight. So I think they make it through the Walmart checkout. Where they don't make it through is the Whole Foods. Because that's where the gorgeous guys and girls who are taking care of their bodies, who can afford to eat organic food and buy expensive creams and take $500 worth of vitamins a month and have a membership in the gym, that's where they shop. So, you don't really have to worry about the Walmart checkout, but you got to worry about the Whole Foods. I think. I've noticed that. So guys, if you want to find some beautiful girls, don't go to Walmart. Go to Whole Foods. Or girls, if you want to find some beautiful guys, they're not at Walmart. The guys at Walmart have big pot bellies, because they're that's the kind of people they attract. I made a study of it. I'm not criticizing. I just made a study. Because I travel a lot, and I shop at Walmart, and I shop at Whole Foods. And I've seen the difference. It's noticeable, believe me. Okay, so much for Walmart. You do find women that dress very chaste, like Muslims, for instance, just their eyes show, and still the men is agitated and say, "Oh, look at those eyes." Yeah, that's why they cover their faces. That's why they cover them all. I was sometimes seeing pictures of the women, and they're like covering their eyes, and then they go, "Okay, this, Western man can't understand it, but a devotee man can understand it." They go, "Yeah, this is cool, You can't even see them if you want to. They don't give you a, yeah." Okay, so the point is, men are attracted by women, so the less you show them, then the better. Of course, then some men will say, "Yeah, but they cover themselves, it just makes us imagine." Well, that's your problem, When they're wearing a bikini, it's a lot easier to imagine it than when they're dressed from head to toe. So, now, our society is so weird. I mean, it's crazy. Could you imagine that you went in a time machine, it's like 1850, right? And you got in the time machine, and you ended up at Jacksonville Beach during spring break, the year 2010, coming from 1850. And you're a boy of 18 years old, and you saw on that beach what you never saw before in your life. You would think you're in heaven, right? I mean, you couldn't believe, you just think, well, these women are all walking around in their underwear, and they're like, they don't think anything's wrong with it. But so we've created a social system where women can walk on a beach in their underwear, and it's totally normal. That's all bikinis are, is underwear, right? Or worse than underwear. Probably your underwear is less revealing than their bikinis. So just try to understand what's going on. And these guys go to the beach, and then, oh, they're getting this girl pregnant, and this girl's being raped. It's like, hello? Anybody home? Put two and two together. And you go to college, and this is where you learn to do these things, and you learn how to drink and party, and, it's like, and why do we have so many problems in society, and why is there so much divorce? Well, it's kind of obvious if you look at it. So, ladies, do a service to all the guys in this world and just keep it cool. And guys, do a service to ladies and don't see them as machines. Respect them as mothers, as goddesses, as sisters. Okay, so now Bhakti and Carol says, if people liked what I was wearing years ago, they didn't say so. But since I have been wearing devotional clothing, quite a few people have told me they like what I wear. Strangers. There's even a man who said he didn't like the way women dress now, but he thought they should dress like me. Nice. When the man who wanted sex came back, he was a rabbit in Kansas. I don't understand. Is that a joke? Or a story? He took birth as a rabbit in Kansas? Must be some story. Yeah, I think anytime women go around in saris, if they're nice saris, they always get compliments. And, it's respectable. It's attractive. It's still in India, most women are covered from the neck down to the feet. That's nice. It's easier for men. Okay, so I think this idea of the father protecting the young girl is becoming more clear now, and the options of not protecting her, of so-called independence of the young girl. The independent young girl leaves home at 18, goes to college, and becomes a whore, but doesn't get paid for it, basically. Not all of them, but like 70%, probably. And so now, what happens? By the time you get married, the guy you're marrying or the girl you're marrying, in general, has been sleeping around a lot and has had a lot of sex. So now it's that much more difficult for them to keep it controlled within marriage once the physical attraction wears off in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whenever it is. And now they're stuck with the fact that, there's other girls or guys out there that are pretty hot and kind of, not really so happy with you. So if you enter marriage with that attitude and mindset, this is what happens. Whereas if you enter as a virgin and then you're committed to that, and it's not just about sex, it's about creating a family and a union and a responsible relationship for your spouse and your kids, then it's different. And it's much easier to work out problems. And sex is not the center of your life. And it's not supposed to be for devotees. Okay. Bhakti and Carol wants us to remember the man who wanted sex and came back as a rabbit in Kansas. You have to tell us about him, because it's going to be hard for me to remember him if I don't know who he was and why he came back. Prabhupada said that the hippies would come back as cockroaches because they were dirty. So, make sure you take a bath every day. And Prabhupada said illicit sex destroys cleanliness. So the hippies, having a lot of sex. So I guess that worked out. It made sense. Okay, let's read some more. What is protection? And this is what we were talking about a while ago. It is a sense of being loved and cherished. So that's nice. So this one conception of protection as being the antithesis of being free. No, it's being cherished and loved. That's a nice way of looking at it. Just like many times we talked about surrender in a way which is very positive rather than the way we may, a connotation that comes up with surrender is, I'm becoming a slave, or I'm giving up, or something, giving up my freedom and free will and becoming a robot or something. And so nobody wants to surrender if that's what surrender is. So often we might find the same problem with the concept of being protected. Well, I want to be independent. I don't need to be protected. Or what does this protection mean? What is it being loved and cherished? So let's read. This is from a purport in the 4th canto, 26th chapter, text 17. Actually, the woman must always be protected by her husband. We always speak of the goddess of fortune as being placed on the what of Narayan? The chest. Now Bhakti and Carol say, didn't I tell that story about the rabbit in Kansas? Nope. If I did, I've got amnesia, I don't remember. The goddess of fortune is placed on the chest of Narayana. In other words, the wife must remain embraced by her husband. Thus she becomes beloved and well protected. Just as one saves his money and places it under his own personal protection, one should similarly protect his wife by his own personal supervision. Just as intelligence is always within the heart, so a beloved chaste wife should always have her place on the chest of a good husband. This is the proper relationship between husband and wife. A wife is therefore called ardhangani, or half of the body. One cannot remain with only one leg, one hand, or only one side of the body. He must have two sides. Similarly, according to nature's way, husband and wife should live together. So, nice example. Goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, resides on the chest of Narayan. So, what is dear to one is what is in one's heart. So the wife who is dear to the husband, or should be dear, or is dear, always remains close to the heart of the husband, which means, Prabhupada gives the example, just as you protect money, something which is near and dear to you is always protected, taken care of. Now, what happens when the husband doesn't do that? Well, what often happens is the wife becomes unhappy, feeling unloved and unprotected. Now, I want to tell you something which is really interesting, kind of funny also, but it's true. Funny in an interesting way. Studies have shown, and the Bible even teaches this, that what women want and what in terms of relationship and what men want in terms of relationship are different. And who knows what women want, which is different from what men want? And who knows, in other words, who knows what women want and who knows what men want? What do men want from the wife? Uddhava, do you know? Uddhava says many things. Okay, we'll start with the women. I'll give a hint. Women want to be loved. That's what they want from their husband. They want to be loved. Either shown their love, told they're loved, or what's the third way of doing it? Or you can show somebody, or you can be physical. You can do things to show you love them, or you can be physical to show you love, touching. And so what they found, and the Bible says that the husband should love the wife. And it said the wife should respect the husband. It said so that the deepest need of the wife is to receive affection from the husband, but the deepest need of the husband is to be given respect. So they asked guys, they did surveys, and they asked men, say, how do you feel when your wife doesn't respect you? And they're like, I feel miserable. I can't be happy if she doesn't respect me. It's just, I need to be respected. He says, well, what if she doesn't love you? He goes, nah, it's not a problem. But I need to be respected. So, if she doesn't show all this affection for a guy, that's like, whatever. He needs respect. We've talked about this a little bit indirectly. We're talking about men's ego, the male ego. How when the woman is subordinate or submissive to the husband, that really fits in with the male ego because he likes to be respected and controlled. So one woman who had been to one of these talks about the need for men to be respected, she came home one day, her husband was in he was reading a book or something, and she walked in. She said, honey, I have so much respect for you. I just respect you so much. She was going on and on and on. And then she came back to her women's group and said, hey, you should have seen what happened next week. He was taking the kids out, doing all, he did the laundry, he did the dishes. He was like putty in my hand just because. So that's what men want. And women, guys, you can like buy your wife a new car, and you could, work 14 hours a day and this and that, and you come home and she's moping and groping, and he says, what's wrong? And she says, you never tell me you love me. And he says, yeah, but I'm working 14 hours a day, I'm paying for this house, I bought you this car, I do this and that. He goes, yeah, but you never tell me you love me. So that's, not all women are like that, but this is an example of that. So protection in this sense means to be loved and cherished. That's what women want. So when we're talking about, the natural psychology of women wanting to be protected, and the natural psychology of the male ego wants to protect. What kind of guy, how does a guy feel when he can't even take care of his family? He kind of feels like, he doesn't feel like a guy. He feels like just been castrated or something. It's just that this is not, the male, the protector, the provider, taking care of the family, through trial and tribulation, whatever it is. That's the male ego. And that naturally solicits respect from the family, because here's the person who's taking care. And in Vedic culture or ancient times, one of the ways that women addressed their husband was pati. And pati means, who knows what pati means? Pati means protector. So a woman likes to be protected, She takes care of the kids, takes care of the family, and doesn't have to worry about so many other things. And then the man he goes out, the hunter and gatherer, he's out there, providing. So women want to be loved, and then men want to be respected, and one of the ways men show their love is just through protection, through taking care, so making sure that the woman is on the chest of the husband. So it's 9:01. So I'll read what Bhakti and Carol says. If anyone has any other questions, now's the time to ask, or comments, please make them. Bhakti and Carol says, men want someone to take care of their physical needs, sex, food, take care of the house. Yes. And that's natural for a man. Sometimes men want their wives to be like their mothers, but that doesn't always work out well. So guys, reconsider your relationship with your wife. If you're treating her like a mother, that's not probably the best thing. Unless that's how she wants to be treated and how you want to treat her, and everybody's happy. Okay, so ladies, one of the things that you may want to do is help other ladies understand how their presence, how they dress, how they interrelate with men can be a source of either agitation or sobriety for men. And I've had the experience, it's an interesting experience I had. I'll tell you a little bit. 1976 I went to San Diego, and what I was doing in those days, my main service was to organize book distribution. I was doing that for a number of years in different temples. So I'd been in San Diego previously, and I went back to stay. I'd been traveling. I'd been away for a couple of years from San Diego and done a lot of traveling, and I wanted to settle down. So I came back to San Diego to be in charge of the Sankirtan. And there were one or two men who were doing Sankirtan, and they were basically self-sufficient. They didn't need to be organized that much. They knew where to go, what to do. And then there were like 6 or 7 other women. And that was more of a job. And we had to organize traveling parties and so forth. So I was basically spending most of my time with the women, because the men, as I said, they were fairly self-sufficient. And one of the things that I noticed, particularly about these women, they were all very Krishna conscious. And so, even though I was spending a lot of time with them, because they were so Krishna conscious, I wasn't at all disturbed in their presence. But I felt very pacified in their presence, just because the way they dress, the way they're interrelated, their whole demeanor. It had that effect on me. So that's the effect that you as women can have on men, or you can have the opposite effect, which is to disturb their mind. And how much, when we give other people Krishna consciousness, it comes back to us. So that way, if you're helping men by how you deal with them, become more Krishna conscious, and vice versa for men, if you're dealing with women in a proper way, so you're not disturbing their minds, then you benefit, because that's helping them become Krishna conscious. Whereas if you're disturbing them, it will disturb you, because whatever you give out comes back. And Lord Chaitanya said, as you give out love of God, you get it. So if you're simply disturbing other people's minds, agitating them sexually by your presence, then there may be some reaction. Now you might say, well, it's the fault of the other person that they're disturbed. That may be true also. But if there's anything that you are doing in any way that could be prevented, could be altered so that the person will be more peaceful, then that should be done. Okay. So I think we're going to end here unless someone has an urgent comment or question. And I wanted to thank you all for attending. And if I said anything wrong, please let me know. Mahatma Dasa at Gmail. That's a good one. Mahatma Dasa, not Mahatdasa. Mahatma Dasa at Gmail. Or if you have any questions, comments, whatever you like, you can contact me there. And then we will see you next week, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to go more into the concept of protection and what women are being protected from. And it's just a very interesting topic because we always hear this, protect, but what are we protecting from? So Prabhupada gets more explicit about what women need to be protected from and how men can do that, which kind of goes along with this Dr. Laura 10 stupid things women do to ruin their lives. So it's kind of those things that men are meant to help protect women from so they won't make poor decisions that can negatively affect their lives. Okay? Thank you, Mayapur. Thank you, Sunil, Bhakti and Carol, and everyone else. Hare Krishna.